Hi, and thanks so much for joining me. Today we are talking about these two blur powders. If you'd like to see that, please keep watching. Today we are talking about the Perfect Blur Finishing Powder by Chantecaille, which is the one I've been using for months now, the one I've recommended over and over again. And I have a backup of it as well because as of now it's limited edition. I have been asked quite a bit about this one though and how it compares. I didn't have it, so I did order it a few weeks ago, and since then I've been wearing these side by side for approximately 2 weeks. So it is hard to swatch them side by side, but I actually did have a chance to do that a while ago and see what the difference was, and I still was drawn towards the Chantecaille. But now that I've had the two and had a chance to wear them, I'm going to put them on for you side by side. I have them on side by side right now, and we'll talk about them and I'll give you my final thoughts at the end. I have on all of my makeup. I went with a neutral foundation in that it's not a Sisley or Chantecaille. I went in with La Mer just to be as neutral as possible. Clé de Peau concealer, and then I will list all of the other items that I have on in the description box below. We'll go ahead under the eyes first. I have my Deluxe Kabuki brush by Ray Morris, and I'm going to use Sisley on this side over here. So I'm going to take the brush and just apply it on half of the brush, so I'll leave the other side clean. Okay, you can see it did add just a bit, just like a tint of color. Then we'll go in with the Chantecaille on the other eye. So again, I'll take the clean side of the brush. There is a little bit more coming off of the product when I put the brush in on the Chantecaille side. And right away I can see that it does come across as just a little bit lighter and a little bit of a different finish. So we'll see if the camera can pick up on that. So we got Sisley under here, Chantecaille here. I think you can see there's some more light bouncing off of the Sisley side and the light's being absorbed a little bit more on the Chantecaille side. That gives you an indication of the differences in their finish on initial application. So let's take the Sisley again, and we're going to take this Mineral Buff Brush by Ray Morris, and this is the kind of powder that you need something that will pick up the product a little bit easier. So I'm just picking it up and then I'm knocking off the excess. So we're going to just stamp it on in the center here. It does have some pore smoothing claims. You know, this brush is a little annoying with the hairs coming off of it. I did leave a little bit of discoloration showing here just so you could see. So there's the Sisley side versus the non-powdered side. I'm going to clean my brush off. This is actually quite good, this dry clean brush cleaner by Sephora. You just spray it on like this and then take a paper towel and just clean off the brush. So I thought it only fair to use the same brush to pick up the product. So again, stamping. We have Sisley on this side, Chantecaille on this side. I'm going to wait on blush for a moment just so you can look at it while I'm talking about each of the products. I did have quite a bit of shedding with that Ray Morris brush. By the way, that's probably my least favorite Ray Morris brush. Actually, I think it's the only one I don't love, but I thought it was the best one to pick up the product. So if you do see little black like fibers, that's what it is. Let's talk about some of the upfront information about these. So cost-wise, I have notes here. So the Sisley costs $95 US, while the Chantecaille costs $80 US. So $95, $80. The Sisley has 11 grams, while the Chantecaille has 8 grams, leaving it at $8.06 per gram over here. And then you've got $10 per gram over here. So you get more for your money with the Sisley. When you look at them, the packaging wise, this is smaller than this. Also, you can see the design is different on each of them. Here's the width and the height on those. When you open them up, they both have a mirror inside, both really nice mirrors. And then you look at the pattern. One is rectangular, one is circular. When you look at them though like this, you can see there's a difference in their shade. I'll try and get an outside shot because It's very obvious when you look at them that this one has a more like brownish shade, while this one has a more peachy shade. I'll also swatch them for you outside because that's a really good way to show, but I'll swatch them here as well just so you can see. There's an obvious difference between the two on appearance. So if you were in a store swatching them side by side, here's the Chantecaille versus the Sisley. So I think that's pretty clear that the Sisley comes across as deeper. Here's what my fingers look like as well. That's what they look like on my fingers. So you can see the difference. This is the Chantecaille, the lighter one, and the deeper one is Sisley. They both claim no animal testing. They both claim perfect skin effect. So I get that from both of them. They're perfecting, but in a little bit of a different kind of a way. This Sisley claims an Instagram filter, while Chantecaille claims a softly filtered appearance. Then we got for Chantecaille that it smooths wrinkles and fine lines, while Chantecaille claims it smooths. Then we've got blurring imperfections on the Sisley side, and then blurring imperfections on the Chantecaille side as well. So I left these kind of not as concealed as well as I normally do, just so you can see how well they either blur or don't blur those imperfections, so you can see. They're pretty equal in terms of intensity on both sides too, and they both claim to be universal shades, and that's where I'm really not quite sure about the claim on either one of those. The Sisley looks a little bit deeper for someone who is fair in skin tone, while the Chantecaille looks a little bit light for those who are more rich in skin tone. So let me know if you use either one of these, if you are either side of the spectrum, because I'm medium, I'm pretty much in the middle here. I'd love to know if you have either of these products and if you believe they are universal, because that, I don't know. It doesn't look like they would be, but you'll have to let me know. And then in terms of differences, Sisley has a lot more claims. This one claims fresh and even complexion, illuminates naturally, remains invisible. I do see more of an illuminating aspect to this than this. So as I turn my head, you can see the light reflecting a little bit more than here. It's smooth skin texture, and I get that with a Sisley, and it's very apparent on initial application. Reduces appearance of pores. Let's take a double check. This one does a really nice job of reducing the appearance of pores on initial application. Mattifies, it's not matte, but it has the same consistency and same finish across the whole face, and this is where I'm most oily, so if you're going to see a difference, you would see it between these two, but I think the finish is quite consistent. You can use it on bare skin, which I haven't tried yet, and over foundation, which I did today. You can use it for touch-ups. So speaking of touch-ups, this is where they differ. When I touch up with the Sisley, it's more evident, it's more visible than when I touch up with the Chantecaille. Ultra high performance makeup with key ingredients including light matte HD complex. It's got a matte and an ultra luminous finish, which is an interesting combination. Excellent light reflection, which I think you can see. Perfect adherence, perfect color match, transparent, melts into skin, second skin, and all of those things I agree with. At least on me, it is a nice color match. For Chantecaille, in addition to the claims that we talked about earlier where they are the same, where it differs is that it's weightless, long-lasting gel powder. So this one claims to be a gel powder, although I have to say this one behaves more like a gel would, in my opinion. In terms of powderiness, this one seems a little bit more powdery. It's not powdery by any means, but if you compare the two, this one has a more powdery appearance to it. Optically reflecting pearls, blurring spheres. On initial application, this settles into texture and is more visible if you have any fine texture. So I do, so it kind of like is more visible, it will settle in there, versus Chantecaille. Chantecaille does not do that on initial application. I can touch these up. For instance, I will add, let's do it right now. If I add the Sisley here, what happens, those little hairs, is that it's more visible. It becomes more apparent, when I think the great thing about this is that you don't see it when you apply it initially on an even layer, but as you add more layers, it becomes more visible. So it is more apparent that you're wearing makeup when you go to touch this up. I don't know if you can see it from where you are, but that's my experience. Then when I go in with a Chantecaille, this actually builds up quite nicely when you go to retouch. It's not as visible. So speaking of visible as well, if you, again, are more oily, What I notice is that as the oil starts to come through, and if you've experienced this before, you'll see that makeup gets kind of pushed up away from the face and kind of sits on top of the skin, so it's more raised. So over here with Sisley, I see that more than on the Chantecaille side. So Chantecaille over a longer amount of time does much better in terms of melding with the skin. I'm gonna finish up with blush and I'll be back with some final thoughts on which one I would recommend. I've got on my blush. Let's go through and just recap these two. So again, I've worn these for about 2 weeks side by side. I've even switched sides to see if that made a difference as well. So I've worn them on opposite sides. Just to go through what we did earlier for eyes, I would pick the Sisley over the Chantecaille for setting under the eyes. But in the event that I had a third powder, which would be something like Charlotte Tilbury, I would pick Charlotte Tilbury over the two of those. So these are not the best for under eyes, either one of them. Then on to this area with the pores. This looked really nice and smooth upon initial application. While this one didn't do as good of a job, this one was more mattifying than this. You could see this had an illumination about it, not because of particles in there, but because it smoothed it out versus this side, which is what I really loved about this initially. So in that way, this surprised me that it was less powdery than this on initial application. And then also I noticed though this would settle into some fine lines. So I've got some fine lines here and some darkness, so you could see definitely a contrast and the material kind of gathering in some of those cracks and crevices, I guess. But this doesn't do that. I have said initial application several times because this is where these two are different. The element lies in the time. So it really depends on how long you want to wear either one of these. So this one looks really great initially. Once I've got these on though for about an hour or so and the product is interacting with my skin and the oils on my skin, they look similar, very similar to the degree that I wouldn't be able to tell them apart if I didn't know that I had two different powders on. So over time, they will look the same. Now, if you continue in time, they start to look different again. So what happens is the Sisley doesn't do as well in terms of how it interacts with the skin. It'll start to sit on top of the skin more than the Chantecaille will. Chantecaille holds up much better over time than the Sisley. So it comes down to when you want to use this and for what purpose. So Sisley might be one that I pull for to make a video because I know I'll only be here a couple hours and I don't need it to last, say like 10, 12 hours. Chantecaille, however, would be the one I would pick if I was going to wear makeup for a longer amount of time and needed to touch it up. This one does much better with touch-ups as well as lasting longer and looking better longer. So I hope that helps because that might make the difference for you. Again, the shades are a little bit different, but on, I don't know if it's that visible or that noticeable or distinct that you can see that they are different shades. My recommendation is over time. That's probably what's going to make the biggest difference for you. Short-term wear, I'd pick this. Longer-term wear, I would pick this. Otherwise, I think they do the same job. If you go on initial application though, you might think this one is better. Or this, depending on if you like a more powdery finish. So that also has something to do with it. But then again, over time, they look similar. So it's like this. Smoother application, more perfected application upon initial application, then they come together. They both look very much the same. Then as time continues, they diverge again, with this one not performing as well and this one performing better over time. So that is my over 2 weeks of use side by side. Checking in is what I've discovered on my skin type. So again, that's very specific to my skin type, which is oily in the middle. It is back to where it usually is, where I get oilier in the summer and then dry on the exterior. So if you have dry skin too, then this works well on dry skin, which is the exterior of my face. So they're both nice and lightweight in that way. So I hope that was helpful for you. But again, the Sisley surprised me. Yeah, the Sisley surprised me in terms of being as lightweight and as smoothing as it was, because it's more smoothing initially than the Chantecaille. But again, over time, like in about, let me look at the mirror. In about probably 20 minutes, they'll start to look the same. So I hope that was helpful for you. I hope I included everything I meant to include. If there's something I forgot that's critical, I will leave the information in the description box below. I've yet also to test these as Sisley foundation with Sisley powder versus Chantecaille foundation, Chantecaille powder. So that could also make a difference. But this was a neutral foundation in terms of being neither one of those brands, going with the La Mer. But that is why it took me so long to test this, because the differences were so nuanced that I wanted to make sure I was able to articulate it well. Let me know if there's more information that you want. I will continue to test both of these, but that's what I came up with side by side with a neutral foundation. So I hope that information was helpful for you. And that's it for today's video. So please take care of each other, stay well. And if you enjoyed this video, if you learned something, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and I will see you next time. Thanks.